Welcome to the Passive House podcast, brought to you by Passive House Accelerator, a catalyst for zero carbon building. For news, inspiration, and connections from all flavours of Passive House, check out passivehouseaccelerator.com. Sign up to receive regular updates about events, get your questions answered, and contribute to the community dialogue. There's loads of free information for experienced professionals and people just starting out on their Passive House journey. We hope to see you at one of our weekly Passive House Accelerator live webinars. In the meantime, here's this week's Passive House podcast.
Hello and welcome back to the Passive House podcast. I'm Matthew Cutler coming to you from Auckland in New Zealand.
And I'm Zach Zemke coming to you from Seattle, Washington on the Sailor Sea, which I get to sail on later tonight.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Not a lot of sailing going on in this part of the world. Wellington had a weather warning of what they called a code red, which is apparently the first time they've had that.
That sounds
in
scary.
Wellington.
Yeah.
It's pretty. Wellington's known for being windy, but I heard reports today that one of the wind sensors blew away. It was so windy that
God.
it maxed out, and at 150 kilometers per hour
wow.
gust,
Yeah.
basically it either broke or tore off one of their windsources.
Wow.
Yeah, 7 meter swells in the strait.
7 meter swells.
Yeah, the ferries were cancelled for a couple of days. So yeah, good times down there.
Not like kind of a terrifying sailing situation. So no, definitely less sailing going there.
Yeah, and we had a bit of flooding down south as well. There's huge amounts of rain down in Christchurch and Canterbury because we are approaching. We're in our fall, autumn. Starting to cool down a bit, change of the season. So but just I don't know, it feels a bit more extreme.
Yeah, our natural climate is actually doing pretty well at the moment, but our political climate is a whole different. So that term extreme, it definitely comes to mind. But that's not what this podcast is about.
Yeah, I had a very nice conversation with a builder who I guess lives a bit of a simpler life in Wellington, beautiful part of the world. Sorry, not Wellington, in Wanaka.
Yeah.
Which is absolutely stunning. Central Otago, just north of Queenstown, really amazing part of the world. And there are some really great builders down there, partly because of the environment just, I think, invites people to design beautiful homes, but it is a more alpine environment. So people tend to want to be warm in their houses as well as admiring the amazing view. And that quite often leads them in the direction of things like Passive House. And there are some great builders down there. I've spoken to Mark Anderson in the past, and it was really great to catch up with him and kind of just find out what he's up to and what he does with his firm. But before we get into that, we've got a few people to thank.
We sure do. Yeah. So a big thank you to FACRO for being our sponsor of the week this week and making all of our programming possible here at the Passive House Accelerator. Also, thank you to our stakeholder partner, NYSERDA, the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority. Thanks as well to our founding sponsors, 475 High Performance Building Supply, Ingui Architecture, Partel, Rockwell North America, and Zola Windows. And thanks to our champion sponsors, Bowizo, Cascadia Windows and Doors, European Architectural Supply, FACRO, Icon Windows and Doors, Intelligent Membranes, LG Air Conditioning Technologies, and Source 2050.
Nice. All right. Well, Mark Anderson is the founder, director, and builder at mabuilding.co.nz. He is a certified Passive House craftsperson, builder, and has built some beautiful certified passive homes and also high performance homes. A couple of translations, South Island translations. In this episode, we do talk about 140 frame walls. We're talking about 140 millimeters, which is, what is that, Zach? 6 inches?
Yeah, so roughly a 2x6.
A 2x6, which is more common in that part of the world. As I mentioned, it is a more alpine, it's a colder climate down there. So particularly where there's a large window, designers might need to go to a thicker wall. But I guess just in terms of context, that is a thicker wall relative to the norm, which is a pretty skinny 90 millimeters, which is a 2x4, and a 2x4 is the pretty much the standard of wall thickness for most New Zealand homes and the New Zealand Building Code, also Australia as well. So our walls do tend to be pretty thin, which means that they don't have a massive R value. And of course, when we do talk about R value, we're talking metric. So to convert that, multiply it by about 5. And yeah, that is good to go. And we're also, of course, when we talk about aspect, we're in the southern hemisphere. So Mark mentions, I think, facing the north to get the sun, whereas we're facing the equator towards the north. So a couple of local translations there. All right. Well, as I mentioned, really great to catch up with Mark Anderson, Mark Anderson Builder. Here is my conversation. I hope you enjoy it.
Well, I'm joined today by Mark Anderson from beautiful Wanaka. How are you, Mark?
Going really well today. It's a little bit fresh outside as autumn has started to set in slowly. But yeah, good.
Yeah, fresh. That'd be getting down to single digits. It was about 3 degrees, I think, down in Queenstown last week at one stage.
Yeah, starting to get into those single digits, and it does start to have an impact on our houses already. It's quite interesting.
In what way?
Even my place, I live in a pretty new place, but I didn't know what I know now, and so I didn't air tight it, and I didn't do a few things that I potentially could have done. And to watch that start to drop towards 18, 19 degrees in the mornings, you go to bed, it might be still 22, 23, but you're waking up and it's in the late teens instead of sort of the early 20s, and it definitely has a bit of an impact on when you get out of bed.
Yeah.
Whereas some of the houses that we build that are airtight or they're a bit more energy efficient or they're passive house, they definitely don't have that reduction in heat loss over the evening, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. Let's go back to the start of your practice. You've been around builders for a while. You took over from or did you take over from your dad, or did he just influence you?
He just influenced me. Yeah, he was a builder his whole career. So as a wee fella, that's what I did. I have strong memories of being on sites as a 5, 6, 7, 8-year-old, boy climbing around scaffolding and just being in the smoker shed with all the men and all the boys. And I was always pretty keen on working with my hands. I'm no good at mechanics at all, but
Right.
others of wood and building things, that was sort of the line that I took. So he influenced me, and yeah, I started MA building a few years after my apprenticeship finished, when in my mid, I think it was 27. Started in Dunedin, and then we moved up to Wanaka about 10. I think it's our 10th year now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you get into the finishing and the finer details as well as just the carpentry?
Yeah, we do everything. Yeah. Oh, as in like making things, like making furniture and things like that.
Not so much furniture, but just doing some of the interior. I mean, just looking at some of the portfolio, you've got some. There's a bit of a trend down there because you're sort of more high-end homes, but some of the internal finishes include a bit of timber detailing. So you do some of that sort of stuff yourself?
Yeah, that's we get the product done and then we do it ourselves. Yeah, we're actually sort of going what I call a little bit old school in our company and doing a lot more ourselves. Versus subbing out a lot of the work. The style of houses we build with the layers, I call them layers, sort of lends itself to us just doing a little bit more.
Yeah.
And then there's a wee bit of the control piece there as well, making sure it's done to a really, really good standard. especially things like the installation of insulation. It's always hard to say.
Yeah, yeah.
Installing that insulation, which some maybe overlooked as, oh, it's just insulation, throw it in. But we know that it's really important that we get all those nooks and crannies and good coverage and no gaps and things like that, because all those little gaps add up to big gaps.
So you do that yourself, or in your team directly?
Yeah, me and the team. Yeah.
Which is different from what you'd see in a lot of normal builds or out under subdivision, where you get a contractor just come in and they're on the clock really, because they're getting paid per square meter. So the quicker they whack it in, the better. Is that an extra cost for you to spend the time to do that yourself?
No, I don't think so, because of the way we frame our houses. So because we do dwangless framing, we do Euro corners or California corners. So there's a whole lot less sort of cutting of the insulation.
Right.
So the pieces go in a lot quicker. So I actually think it's potentially either the same or more cost effective to do it the way we do it. Depends what product we're using. We often bump into Tirolana wall insulation, and
Yeah.
a bit more of a time to install that just from a cutting perspective. It doesn't sort of cut as well as a glass wall, fiberglass wall.
Yeah.
But, yeah, when we're doing it, I don't think it takes us any longer, any quicker, but I know that it's done to a really high standard, I guess, with my guys doing it.
Yeah. And does that mean you have product on site from earlier on as well? Because
Yeah.
that's the other reason that the problem I see is that you get those corners that don't get insulated because there's no insulation on site until the wrap's done.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess that is a bonus to the California corner, or a lot of the framing that we use or the techniques we use is sort of reducing the amount of framing in our timber. Allows us to get into those pockets and into behind internal wall junctions and things like that after wall rabs and windows and things like that are in. But also there is that piece on planning, and we just hit it this current job where we had a steel beam on the inside of our wall frame, and we had to put some insulation in behind that in the pocket of the wall frame as we went. So yeah, there's always that.
Yeah, right.
To make sure we get those pockets that are hard to get to, and also internal airtight starter strips had to go in behind the steel beam and things like that as well.
Yeah.
Because we were never going to get back into there, and the beam had to go in before the roof went on. So it's sort of, yeah, there's the houses that we build definitely need a little bit more forward thinking and future planning and sequencing, for sure.
And is that stuff that you do yourself, or does the architect consider that sequencing?
Nah, to us. Yeah.
Right.
We do all the how to. I guess they do the design, and then how we figure out how to put it all together.
Do you have consistent architects that you work with, or do you work with anyone down there?
We have a couple that we have been consistent with now for a few years, and there's a long list of pretty talented architects that we'd be liking to work with more and more, and then they're all up and down the country.
Yeah.
We find that a lot of houses get designed here in Wanaka and Queenstown that actually aren't local architects. They might be from Auckland or Wellington or Christchurch.
Right.
And we just actually clicked the other day to jump on the Passive House website, New Zealand website, and find all the architects that are trained in Passive House.
Yep.
To reach out to it and connect with, one for potential workflow, but also just learning, and just having conversations with and spreading knowledge. And it's a big part of what I do now, especially pre-job, is working alongside architects or designers and looking at the plans and getting in certain contractors like my heating guys, my ventilation guys, and going, how are we going to put this together? And
Right.
catch some of those snags.
And working out together.
Before we get to site, we'll find out, hopefully, I don't know, 90% of things that could go wrong.
Yeah.
One job we've got coming up, we're going to design, we have to change the truss design a little bit to allow for all our ducts and our distribution boards and that for our ventilation machine. We just don't quite have enough room.
Yeah.
So without looking at that future planning, the trusses would turn up, and then you go, uh-oh, now how do we run all our ducts? Whereas actually now I can pick out 6 trusses and ask the truss guys to, hey, can you just cut that hole out there and frame it like this, please, because we need that space.
Right. Are there any new design tools that you're using or are aware of to help with that, or is that just you're just relying on your experience and know that you need a certain size hole to put the big
Yeah.
box in there?
Experience, I think. Yeah,
Right.
the experience, and it is just looking at it with the heating guys as well. You know, the team that I use down here now, they've done, or no, they might have done 20 or 30 mechanical ventilation installs now.
Yeah.
But I've got a few under their belt and they know kind of what works and what doesn't. And I'm always trying to tweak our system, and to not get too technical. But yeah, one of the wee systems we've changed from the last house to this current house is a single top plate on our internal wall frames and then a drops ceiling. And if we don't put a double top plate in, then it allows all our ducting to run through without them having to chop out sections of our secondary top plate.
Why would there have been a secondary top plate?
Back in the day, it was for so our ceiling would go and fix to the first top plate, and then the lower top plate would be for linings.
Right.
Yeah, but because we're always using a airtight paper or a vapor control barrier, we always have a drop ceiling.
Right.
I end up using that. So the last house, I just sort of clicked and went, I don't need that anymore. So that can,
Right.
that's actually a bit lower than where it used to be. So that doesn't need to be there. So
Yeah.
I'm always looking at the system with the guys, and we've just created a thing called a knowledge bank, where we can, when these ideas come up, and you're like, oh, that's a good idea,
Yeah.
we carry
Yeah.
that forward, and how do we spread that across our team? And this
Well,
is,
it's not just your team though. You mentioned before, Noglis, you reduced horizontal framing, horizontal bracing in your frames, reducing the number, an excess top plate. Is that something that you then have to specify from the frame and truss supplier?
yeah. So I work pretty hard with the frame and truss guys, and they're pretty much onto speed now with all that now down here. We use Trust Tech down here, and I've done 4 or 5 or 6 with them now. So they
Yeah.
kind of know what I expect, and I can go through their plans. Again, it's a big part of my job. Again, a little bit of experience, and I know what to look for. And we're just trying to reduce where we can. We've just knocked out another little trimmer stud under the window in the corners of the windows, and we replaced that with a metal bracket.
Right.
Just another piece of timber gone, which is another
Yeah.
piece of insulation in the wall. Because once you start doing a wee bit of research, and there's some really good stuff out there on YouTube, and you start looking at the actual R values of a proper wall in our country, and this is where I come from all the time with clients, is you're told you're getting an R 4.2 wall, and then you chuck massive window in there, maybe a steel beam and a whole lot of timber framing, and that wall's actually performing maybe like an R1 or an R2.
Yeah.
So you're kind of like, what am I actually paying for here?
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of wood.
Yeah, a lot of wood, whereas a lot of our places, I haven't modeled them, but we're probably getting closer to an R3.5 or something.
Yeah.
We're using a good window, we're using good glass, we're reducing all the, framing where we can. We're doing a secondary layer internally, horizontal insulation across the studs to help with that thermal bridging. And all of a sudden that wall's, it might be an R5 that's working at R4. So it's actually getting closer to what it's supposed to work at.
Yeah. So you're doing a 140 frame with an internal
Often,
pattern.
yeah. Yeah, and we find it's house dependable, and the variables at each house is a little bit different, and that's where I love the energy modeling.
Yeah.
And Passive House Planning Package allows us to look into a lot of these things. That place we built last year, we did actually 90mm framing with a 45 to
Yeah.
make up our 6-inch to sort of meet code regulations, I guess.
Yeah.
And I asked the modeler, Arthur Lee, I said, oh, Arthur, do we go up to a 6-inch frame with a 2-inch internal? He said, oh, you're not going to achieve much on this house
Right.
doing that. So I didn't do it because it was going to cost, that might have cost another 10 grand or so to do that. It wasn't worth it in the model. We weren't going to gain a hell of a lot.
Yeah.
Which was
But you were using air tightness membrane on that one?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. All of the houses. Yeah.
Why do you do things the way you you do? Because I mean, there's big demand. I down in Queenstown last week, and I heard that Queenstown and Wanaka, that whole area is a bit of an anomaly at the moment. That it's just kept on growing.
Yeah.
Big demand. People just want a house. So I'm sure you could grow your business just building stock standard houses. Why do you do what you do?
Really good question. My wife almost asked me this the other day. She was like, I'm not sure why you're doing this.
Because you've kind of made a statement to say that you won't build just a code compliant house.
Correct. Yeah. Two statements last year was one, we won't build. Well, we sort of created off the back of a few conversations with clients and potential clients. I sort of designed a tier system for our business, a tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. Tier 1's airtight ventilation, really good framing techniques and good slab techniques. And like that could be a really good basis for a lot of our homes. They cost a little bit more, but they're not like a passive house, which is right down the other end. And then we've got tier 2, which is low E passive, and then tier 3, which is a passive house. And that was just to try and simplify it for people looking at, what am I getting, or what do I want, or what can I achieve? And then, so that's our sort of tier system, which allows us to be about 60 to 70% energy efficient on a tier 1. And then I had another conversation with the client, and they didn't want to do energy modeling, and I was like, trying to get them to energy model the house. So I knew, and they knew what they were getting. And then it clicked to me that their house was quite facing kind of southwest, and I thought, well, they might actually gain enough sun to actually warm this house up, and I actually got them to get over the line because of their orientation, which led me to start thinking every single house is so individual and so different, from the floor plan to the amount of perimeter service area it has, to the orientation, to the location, to the maybe it's got big trees around it and all this. And so then the second part of the story, cut a long story short, is to say that all the houses that we build now, so the clients know what they're getting, and I know they're going to work, is to energy model every single house. Because seeing up and down the country is people have started to build better, which is great. We've also heard stories about how they're not so great, where they're getting too hot, or they're not quite hot enough, or they're not actually working. And you can't just stuff insulation in a house and airtight it and ventilate it and throw good windows at it and then not look at it holistically in the whole thing, from season to season, to orientation, to how much glass versus how much shade, and all this kind of things get thrown in the hat. And if we're not energy modeling, we're not actually looking into the science and how that house is going to work. We could be creating problems.
Absolutely. So did that client, you managed to get them over the line and do the energy model?
Yeah, we did. And it was really interesting because we were able to size some heating systems on it, which saved a wee bit of money on the heating design. And they also just know how it's going to work now, and I was able to actually change. One of the big things I did change on that design was there was a really bad thermal bridge going right around the perimeter of the house, just on how the perimeter edge detail had been designed. And I was able to talk to Arthur, who did the modeling. He said, look, if you can get that from a 90mm to a 6-inch plate, and then have the XPS running right up to the underside of that plate and stop that cold throat, he called it, like a cold bridge all the way around, you're going to save X amount of energy, and it's going to feel a lot warmer. 2-3 mil in, and I was only talking like a 50 mil step in the concrete. It was just how it had been detailed, and thankfully that architect and designer is relatively open-minded, and he was happy to investigate it with me, and with a little bit of pushing from me and a little bit of pushback from him and a wee bit of pushing from me, we got it sort of to a point where we were both happy. And and the clients know now. And the big one on that one was the windows. So we got the 3 different types of windows modeled. And there's always a cost factor there, but there's also a feel factor and what it's going to feel like, and going to be like long term. And the windows are always a big piece of the puzzle when you're building a house, because they are a big ticket item when it costs, especially when you're going to, say, a timber triple glazed unit versus, say, an aluminium unit. although we know the timber triple glaze will perform 3 times better, they might cost 2 to 3 times more. So it's trying to balance
Yeah.
the balance of cost versus performance and performance versus cost and functionality.
Yeah. So I imagine the energy model helped with all of that and
Yeah.
explaining that to the customer. Was their main objection up front the cost of getting the energy model done?
Yeah, a little bit of that, and they just didn't think they needed it. They're like, oh, what are we going to gain from it?
Right.
And then you sort of get it done, and you're like, well, you go and talk through 3 or 4 different scenarios, and they sit back and go, oh, that was worthwhile. That was
Yeah.
good. Glad we did that, And then and they actually led me. The
Yeah.
client actually leading a lot of this for me. I've said in recent interviews and stuff that without people coming and wanting this and demanding this from our industry, I've got no business. I can't just go and build houses for people who don't want this. So
Yeah.
the actual society and actual client base is they're driving the change here.
Right.
We can tell them what to do, but if they don't want to do it, the change ain't going to happen. So it's actually the Joe public that are changing how we build, really.
Yeah. Yeah. What is your marketing strategy? How are you impacting that change locally?
We're across so much. A big piece has been our Instagram feeds and that, and knowledge, trying to break a lot of what we do down quite simply. We've done a wee bit of YouTube stuff, and we're going to look to do a bit more of that. We've done some
Nice.
podcasts this year. I hosted an event last year, just again trying to, with 3 other colleagues, just trying to break down passive house and what it is and why we do it.
Yep.
And that was a really good turnout. We had 60 odd people at that, which was really cool for our first event. We're going to do another event soon in the next couple of months,
Right.
as well, just to try and spread the word. Part of the Better Building group down here in Wanaka, which is advocating for change and advocating for building better, waste management, mental health, and been
Yep.
that for pretty much since the start at 7 or 8 years ago.
Yeah.
And just again keep showing up to that. And sometimes recently I thought, what, sort of like your question before, like why am I doing what I'm doing? I'm not sure, but it just sort of, it feels like the right thing to do.
Mm.
And to try and, I was thinking about it, this interview this morning, and I thought, imagine a world where all Kiwis were living, from 2026, every house that got built was a safe, healthy environment
Yeah.
for us to live in.
Yeah.
And a stat that I sort of love is, as a human being nowadays, we live and work in the inbuilt environment 90% of our life,
Mm-hmm.
yet probably 90% of our indoor environment's not that great.
Yep.
So you're kind of like, that's an interesting thing to think about.
Oh, it's huge. And I've thought that and reflected on that with architects and builders for a while, that you have so much impact on people's health, more so than the so-called health industry, because that's where you go when you get sick. But it's that time that we spend in buildings can't help but impact people's health. So it's a hard thing to convince people, even convincing people to do an energy model, let alone doing all the other stuff. But it's the long-term play. And I think at the end of the day, if you can step back and genuinely be proud of the work that you're doing and what you're leaving behind for the next generation, then who doesn't want that?
Yeah, and that is the big driver, actually. It's the next gen.
Yeah.
If I look back 2 or 3 years when I've been writing down, goals and why I'm doing what I'm doing, it's for my kids and my kids to grow up. So then, hopefully they get in houses like these, and then when they get to 25, 30, 35, 40 and they're building, they don't even blink. This is what they expect, and
Yeah.
the tide comes up and everyone comes up together. And it's, at the moment, it's probably, I'm not sure, it could be potentially more of the wealthy end that are building, especially at a passive house level, and it'll be great in time to see that change.
Yeah.
I know there's some great projects around the country for rental spaces or selling at a lower level, which is awesome, and it'd be nice in time to be able to deliver that as well.
Yeah.
Maybe that's just the Wanaka market that I find myself in a little bit. But someone asked me
Yeah.
the other
Yeah.
day, it's not just the wealthy we need to do this for, and we need to get it to all decile levels.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting you talk a bit about costs and being able to take out cost. When you take out unnecessary timber, that's contributing to taking out that cost. And when you simplify the design, that's helping to reduce that cost and allowing some more of that budget to go into the things that do make the difference, like the windows, which are going to be expensive, but they're going to be expensive anyway. It's just a matter of, putting that money in the best place to get the best performance out of it. So it tends to be all those finer details and the size and the beautiful finishes that make it luxury, but it's the performance stuff that doesn't necessarily have to be expensive if you can build it into the process.
Absolutely. And a build we did last year through the energy model, we designed an underfloor heating system, was 40 odd thousand. Arthur again modeled that one for me and said, you ain't going to need that if you do X, Y, and Z, So we modeled it for air tightness with a good framing techniques and a ventilation system, and had really good orientation. So we had quite good solar gain through the winter, not in the summer. And so we got rid of it. So we cut that 40K, and I looked at the price of the heat pump, the ventilation, and the air tightness, and it cost about 40K.
Yeah.
We literally just flipped that money on its head. And then they were in their house last year, moved in June. Freaked me out a little bit because it was quite
right in the middle of winter.
Right in the middle of winter. Where did
There's your house without underfloor heating?
Yeah, and it had a polished concrete slab, and we hadn't had the sun. We did the inversion for a couple of weeks, and there's no sun, so there's nothing heating the house up, and doors open. They moved in. They messaged me a week later, said, "Oh, it's a bit cold," and I went, "Oh, have I done the right thing here?" And then the sun came out, and then boom, and they lived in it, and the heating of living in it, the ovens and the showers and everything that was producing energy. It slowly warmed itself up over a couple of weeks, and then they were in it. It was about 21, 22 all winter long.
Nice.
Their power bills, including hot water, average from $7 to $10 a day, whereas most houses in Wanaka will be at least double that, standard houses.
Yeah.
We're talking a month.
Yeah, at least.
Topping out about 250 a month to 260 a month. And I've heard numbers well into the thousands here.
Yeah.
So that was really cool. Great feedback. They live and work from home, so they're getting the benefits. 180 square meter house, designed really well, and their whole floor area is 22. No more of this. The living room's 25, 30 because they got the fire roaring, and the bedrooms are 9.
Yeah.
It's consistent. That's the one piece of the puzzle, I think, that building houses like we build them now is consistent across the floor area.
Yeah. Very good. Hey, well, awesome stuff, Mark. Doing great work down there. Where can people find you and follow you?
Main site to come and see us would be mabuilding.co.nz. We've got a lot of blogs, a lot of information in there around Passive House, Instagram, MA Building, I don't know, Facebook, all the places, LinkedIn. We're across YouTube now as well.
Nice.
We're even across TikTok. They threw TikTok as well.
Yep.
Interesting. None of my doing. It's my amazing little marketing team that beaver away in the background that do it all for me and make us look amazing. But we are doing amazing things too. So it's
absolutely
really good.
Yeah. Hey, well, thanks very much for your time. Really appreciate it, Mark. And I highly recommend people coming to meet you in person and check out some of your fine work down there because it's, who wouldn't want to go and visit Wanaka?
Yeah, absolutely. And anyone who wants to reach out, like I've got builders down here that are slowly maybe not building to the limit that we're building to, but they might be adding what I call the 1%ers in. They might be framing a certain way. They might be adding to ventilation machines. They might be insulating slightly differently, or they're adding little components. So if anyone wants to pick my brain on the framing or pick my brain on things, I'm pretty open and advocating for change across the industry.
And that was Mark Anderson of MA Building in Wanaka. You can check him out and some of his beautiful portfolio at mabuilding.co.nz. What did you think, Zach?
Oh, it was great. I love the commitment, A, not to build code minimum, and B, to model all projects. Those are bold and important moves.
Yeah, and it's starting to pay off. I know it's a bit of a challenge, and a few people, I know architects that have wanted to make that leap and put a line in the sand and say, I'm only going to do this, and if you want just a standard home, I'm not your person. I guess there's that fear that you're going to turn business away, but in most cases, that doesn't tend to be too much of a problem, and people make a reputation for themselves and end up doing amazing work and finding that there is a market for it.
Yeah. And I imagine that when you are operating in a situation where 2x4 construction is the norm, that I guess two things. One is that maybe as a practitioner who cares about performance, it becomes just more of a like, yes, of course, I'm not going to build to code build minimum. But also, there's a bigger delta between the kind of business as usual norm that everybody else is doing and what passive house practitioners are striving for and achieving. So I think that's something to celebrate and give due respect to.
Yeah, yeah. I think we've spoken to a lot of architects and also builders in Central Otago and some other pretty stunning locations, and a lot of the homes in those types of places, these are quite high-end homes. They're beautiful environments. Quite often have a view. Often that view's not in the most optimum solar direction. So there's usually an architect involved. They might have a slightly higher budget, but not always. But it does mean that there's a lot of bespoke design, and it's really encouraging to know that there's an appetite, or there can be an appetite for incorporating both high performance with that high end of really high quality finishes and what might be marketed as luxury homes in terms of nice fittings and beautiful design, but it's also got to work well as well. So it's great that there are people who are willing to spend their money, but not necessarily just throw lots of heating and lots of energy at keeping these beautiful homes warm and dry and comfortable, because you don't have to. You can have a beautiful home that's a luxury home but still really healthy and doesn't consume a lot of energy to operate.
Absolutely. And I think we've said probably a number of times on different episodes that, we commented on this trend of often we see uptake of passive house start with the kind of more luxury single family homes in new markets. And then the next wave tends to be multifamily buildings, often affordable housing providers who, because there are a couple advantages there. One is that that's another building type where the owner owns the person who invests in the passive house performance will often own that building for a long time. But then there's also, of course, the geometry benefits of having a building with a large volume and a small surface area, which is what you get when you're doing multifamily buildings. So it's kind of it's cool to see this two kind of complementary, in some ways opposites, affordable multifamily and high-end single family, helping to get passive house established in different markets.
Yeah. The other thing I really like about the market that Mark is building in is the attention to detail that he is able to do in his craft, and it really is a craft. And we talked about him doing some of the joinery and some of the detail work inside, as well as just the building structure. And there's lots of examples of this if you check out his portfolio of projects on his website. And we've seen this before as well, of builders who just really are passionate about what they do. They're not just building houses as quickly as they can and moving on to the next one. They really enjoy. You can tell that they enjoy what they do, and they're really proud of the work that they do and leave behind, creating a real legacy that's beautiful. And it includes all those the things that are visible in the end product. So in this case, there are things like exposed trusses in the roof with pretty detailed joinery which is part of the structure, but it's also visible, and other joinery components, built-in furniture, those sorts of things. That's all. It seems might seem like it's just normal, but it's definitely not normal for a lot of group or volume builders. But it adds quite a lot of flair and beauty to the end product, and it's a testament to the skill of people like Mark.
Yeah, and cool to see that combined with this, conviction that he has to make these better buildings. And I thought it was great when you asked him, why are you doing this? And he's like, well, my wife is asking me this too, and it basically boils down to it feels like the right thing to do, and specifically that his statement of imagine a world where every house that got built in New Zealand was a safe, healthy environment.
Yeah.
It's about the people.
Yep. I love what he does. The only downside to having conversations like that kind of makes me maybe slightly jealous. I kind of want to go and be a builder because it sounds like
I'm okay with that as long as you bring a microphone so that we can still do this.
Yeah. I don't know if I could if my body would handle it, but it certainly looks like some pretty nice work that they get to do. So hats off to builders. I got a real I think we need to celebrate our builders just as much as we do our architects, because they do.
Absolutely.
And all the trades.
Yep.
All the people that do the physical work to actually put buildings together. I think they need to be valued much more highly.
Couldn't agree more.
All right. What have we got coming up on the accelerator? We've got some exciting things happening.
We do. The really big, exciting thing that I hope that everybody listening will join us for is Reimagine Buildings 25. So this is our big global online conference that we do every year. And the theme of this Reimagine Buildings 25 is past, present, future. It will be held on June 12th, 2025. And it's a 12-hour experience that is divvied up into 3 sections. So there is a past segment that will focus on exploring transformative projects that are revitalizing and repurposing our existing building stock. And then the present segment will celebrate groundbreaking designs that are pushing the boundaries of what's possible in the built environment, so new construction in this case. And the future segment will dive into next-gen materials, cutting-edge technologies, and the future of resilient, climate-positive buildings. So it's going to be full of chances to connect with other people like you who are on the same path in our collective project of transforming the built environment to clean and resilient buildings, and we'll feature world leaders in practice. So very excited about that. And you can go to PassiveHouseAccelerator.com to register. You'll see a banner at the top of our homepage that takes you to the registration page. And people who register for the conference will also receive a 2-month free pass to the Reimagine Buildings Collective. So we'll have a lot of fun in the collective this summer with attendees of the conference. And then also, another exciting event on May 22nd, we have a special Passive House Component Spotlight Zoom gathering that will feature Rockwell and 475 High Performance Building Supply introducing a brand new product called Smart Rock, which is an all-in-one interior continuous insulation, airtightness, and vapor control solution. So it combines stone wool insulation from Rockwell with Proclima's Intello Plus Smart Vapor Retarder. And it's a product that's used for continuous insulation on the interior of concrete and masonry exterior wall assemblies. So really great for retrofits and an exciting new product. So we hope people will join us for that free event. And on the Reimagine Buildings Collective, which I just mentioned, this is where we gather together building professionals who are stepping up to tackle climate change so that we can connect and learn from one another and move the ball down the field as fast as we can and thrive while doing so. This we have some great Ask Me Anything sessions with experts and residents like Ed May, Nikita Reed of Quinn Evans, as well as Bev Craig of Mass CEC. And we're launching a new fireside chat interview series, which will include opportunities for questions and answers on Tuesdays. And it's called the Reimagine series. So we're going to have Reimagine Design, Reimagine Construction, and Reimagine Materials, and we'll be rotating through talking with leaders in each of those areas about how they are moving toward zero carbon building in various ways. So lots of great stuff on tap.
Lots of great stuff.
Yeah, as always. Thanks.
Yeah, as always. Yeah, really looking forward to interested about that Rockwall Proclima component spotlight. That sounds very cool, and of course the Reimagine stuff. Amazing conference last year, and really cool to be repeating that again. So definitely head on over to Reimagines, check that out, sign up, be part of that. It's going to be awesome. All right, thanks, Zach.
Thank you, Matthew.
We'll be back again next week on Passive House Podcast.